The clock started the moment Opportunity touched down on Mars. Everything about the mission suggested a short life. The rover had been sent to another planet to do a specific job, in a specific place, for a specific amount of time. 90 Martian days. That was the plan. In the opening weeks, the expectation felt reasonable. A small rover rolled across rust-colored ground beneath a pale sky. Its tracks stretched behind it in the dust. Cameras returned images. Instruments examined rocks. The mission moved through its checklist. Mars was not considered a place where machines lasted. The environment was cold. Dust drifted across the landscape. There would be no repair crews, no replacement parts, no second chances. Every movement consumed a little more of a machine already separated from Earth by millions of miles. The question was simple. Could it complete the mission before time ran out? Then the finish line arrived, and nothing ended. The signal continued arriving from Mars. The rover continued driving. New images appeared. New targets were explored. Days became months. Months became years. The mission that had been designed around survival suddenly had a different problem. People were no longer asking whether Opportunity would reach 90 days. They were asking how far beyond 90 it could go. At first, the answer seemed obvious. The rover must have been built better than expected. That explanation fit what people could see. Opportunity kept moving. It crossed ground nobody imagined it would reach. The tracks behind it grew longer and longer across the Martian surface. The original design life began to look less like a limit and more like a conservative estimate. Yet another year passed. Then another. The ending kept being postponed, but something else was happening at the same time. Every mile driven across Mars depended on sunlight. Opportunity was powered by solar panels. The rover could survive cold nights, operate instruments, communicate with Earth, and continue its journey only if enough sunlight reached those panels. Dust slowly settled on them. The change was visible. Images of the rover's solar arrays showed a surface gradually becoming darker. Each layer reduced the energy available for survival. The threat was not dramatic. There was no explosion, no sudden failure. Just a little less sunlight. Then something unexpected happened. The power numbers rose again. Not because engineers cleaned the panels. Not because a repair had taken place. The Martian wind had done it. Dust devils and cleaning gusts swept across the landscape, lifting dirt away from the rover's solar arrays. Panels that should have remained buried under dust suddenly became more productive. Mars was doing two opposite things at once. The same planet threatening the rover's survival was occasionally helping preserve it. The explanation for Opportunity's longevity changed. Durability alone no longer seemed sufficient. Engineering mattered. Careful operations mattered. But survival also depended on circumstances the rover could not control. The next question was harder. How many times could luck keep arriving? Years continued to accumulate. Opportunity climbed slopes, examined craters, and crossed distances that transformed it from successful mission hardware into something else entirely. A survivor. The rover's body aged. Mechanical systems carried wear from countless operations. Power margins narrowed. Engineers on Earth learned to work around limitations that did not exist during the mission's opening months. Each new year felt different from the one before. The mission was still alive, but it was living on borrowed time. The tracks stretching across Mars now meant something new. They were no longer evidence of exploration alone. They were evidence of endurance. The original 90-day mission existed farther and farther behind the rover, buried beneath years of continued operation. Yet every survival story eventually encounters a threat larger than the previous one. For opportunity, that threat appeared on the horizon as dust. At first, it looked familiar. Dust storms were part of life on Mars. The rover had survived them before. The pattern seemed established. Dust would arrive. Power would fall. Conditions would improve. The rover would recover. That was how the story worked. Until the sky began disappearing. The storm expanded across the planet. Dust filled the atmosphere. Sunlight weakened. The horizon faded into darkness. The resource that had sustained opportunity for years was no longer merely reduced. It was vanishing. The solar panels could only collect what reached them. And now, almost nothing did. The rover transmitted a final image. Dark. Incomplete. A landscape fading into shadow. Then silence. At first, silence did not mean the end. There was still another possibility. Recovery. That possibility had existed many times before. The rover had survived situations that seemed impossible. It had returned after setbacks. It had repeatedly extended a lifespan that should have expired years earlier. So Earth listened. Commands were sent. Antennas turned toward Mars. Days passed. Then weeks. Then months. The old survival pattern never returned. If the earlier explanation had been complete, opportunity should have recovered again. The rover was well engineered. The operations team was experienced. Mars had helped before. Yet none of those things produced a signal. The formula that had preserved survival for nearly 15 years had finally stopped working. Not because the rover suddenly became fragile. Not because the mission had been poorly designed. Because the condition underneath everything else had disappeared. Sunlight. Without it, the chain broke. More than 1,000 recovery commands crossed space toward Mars. No reply came back. Eventually, the listening ended. The mission was declared complete. And suddenly, the opening of the story looked different. The 90-day design life was no longer a technical detail. It became the scale of the achievement itself. The rover had never been intended to become a symbol. It had been built as a tool, a machine expected to complete a short assignment and eventually stop. Instead, it spent nearly 15 years postponing its ending. The final image remains. A darkening landscape. An incomplete frame. A machine waiting beneath a sky that no longer provided what it needed. Back at the beginning, the countdown seemed to define the mission. 90 days. Looking back, that number measures something else. Not how long opportunity was expected to survive, but how long it was expected not to.